try to meet at least once a month. Typically it's the last Thursday of the month. This is an exception because we had a very nice speaker who was willing to come here, and so we said, sure, anytime you want. So we're here today. But typically we're meeting on a Thursday, and usually it's the last day of the month, last Thursday of the month. Topics vary. We don't have to talk about anything specific, even though there's the word Google in our name, GDG Los Angeles. We can actually talk about anything we want. Typically, we don't talk about Microsoft. They've offered to sponsor our events and provide food, and I seriously considered it, and then I just kind of didn't have much interest, so I didn't pursue it. But if there is a topic that you're interested in, regardless of what it is, feel free to send me a message, let me know. Whether it's a topic that you can speak about or you would like to hear someone else speak about, doesn't matter. We can go to try to find a speaker. So people will actually come to speak here. I don't know. We don't have to pay them usually. They will actually just come to speak to us. So if there's anything you're interested in, let me know. We'll do our best to find somebody. If you want to give a talk, we're more than happy to provide you the option to talk as well. And we can even work with you to kind of tweak the talk, we'll say, to kind of coach you. Was it 2 weeks ago we met? And we had a long-time member who wanted to give a talk. I pushed him to do it actually. But he agreed to give a talk. And so I worked with him to refine the slides a couple times. There's a couple of tricks that we know that you make the slides better. And he's really interested and wants to keep refining it and hopefully actually take the show on the road. So if there's anything that you think that you might be able to give a talk on, definitely let us know. We also have a big DevFest event happening in the fall. The date is still TBD. At this point, I think we're getting closer to November than October, possibly December even, so it's going to be a while away. But that is still the fall. And it'll be a big event. It will be at least a whole day, if not longer than one day. Last year we had 115 people or so at our DevFest event. This year we'll probably have closer to double that. So as we learn more about the date and the venue and all that stuff, we'll let you know. If you're interested in helping out, whether it's for DevFest or even for just a normal meetup, we're always looking for more people to volunteer. You don't have to really allocate much time to this. Again, it's not my job. It's not none of our jobs. It's something we do just because we enjoy it. So once a month we show up, we do stuff, sometimes we talk between those meetups. There's really not much time left. So anyone can help out, and the more people who help out, the better our events are. So if you see something like, boy, I really wish we had more ice for our drinks, that's your chance to volunteer. We'll give you the money to go buy the ice, we'll bring it here, and then we'll all have ice. We're like, wow, this meal was so much better than last time, or we didn't have enough ice. You know? Or we once had some feedback, wow, I really wish we had pepperoni pizza instead of cheese pizza. And I was like, why don't you go buy the pepperoni pizza? And today we have pepperoni pizza. So, you know, that's all it takes. Yeah. Gluten-free pizza? That's sure. If you name the place where you can get it from. Is it really gluten-free at Domino's? I don't know. It's definitely made in the same facility. If we're going to get gluten-free, let's go all the way. Yeah, you're not paying for it. So if you can coordinate with me before the next meetup, we'll have gluten-free pizza. We'll even put it set aside and we'll write a big gluten-free on it so that someone else doesn't go take it and then realize, oh, I ate gluten-free pizza. I've had it before, it's fine. No? Is it like on lettuce? Like a hamburger without the bun and then they take the lettuce and put cheese on it? Yeah. Alright. So, without further ado, today we're very lucky that we actually have someone who volunteered to come to LA and speak to us. And he's actually an expert as well, which is very rare for our speakers. So we have a Googler multi who came in just for the day. So he's going to speak to us about AMP. How many people have heard about AMP? Hopefully you have it here. How many people have actually created an AMP page? Wow, okay, one. So maybe by the end of today, the evening, we'll all be able to create one. We'll see. I don't want to set up multi too much, but we'll see. So come on over. We're going to do a little swap here. Please welcome multi.
use the mic. I'll just read it out. Cool. Yeah, so my name is Malte. I actually lead the engineering team at Google, working on them. And so I'm going to give a talk. And then I was just, because I want to get something from this. So I'm looking forward to lots of questions and anything you would want to talk about. So we can just take our time to talk about what we would like to discuss. And we don't have to talk about them. I know way too many things about web performance. So you can ask me anything about that, maybe other stuff. Yeah, this is also my first time that I'm excited. It's not native down here. I'm originally from Germany and spent a lot of time in SF, where it's 59 degrees today, so it's nice here. Yeah, let's talk about AMP. So AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Page, which is like terrible and forget about it. It's a stupid name. Just call it AMP. It's great. It's for super fast content web. And if by now you might have seen it because it's in live products, but so there's this experience where you can swipe through search results, and the main feature is that when you actually tap it, like this, right? It's like really fast, right? So that's what everyone wants, right? There's I don't think you can discuss whether that's a good idea. That's how it should be, and unfortunately, that's not how the web is today. We actually our internal numbers. We kind of did a lab experiment, like how fast comparable pages typically load. It's only 22 seconds thing. It's not very fast. And yeah, on the other hand, AMP is kind of fast. I have some numbers. Median load time, it's under 1 second, which is, could still be better, but that's what, what the human brain is kind of going, I'm not bored yet, really. And what I'm more excited about, because I think that's something everyone should know about performance, is that median, that's 50% of people have better experience and 50% of people have worse experience. And sometimes that is actually very significant. And so what we see in the end is that our 99th percentile performance is 8-second load time. And that is, that sounds slow, but that means you're you're the 100th unluckiest user, and your phone is on 2G, and the Wi-Fi is not really working, and it takes 8 seconds, right? That's not great, but that's kind of okay. And compared to the normal average of 22 seconds, it's a very significant improvement. And so we do this because obviously our users are not happy with our search results when we send them to those pages and they don't really load, or they're have this terrible experience in loading. And as I've showed you in that little stupid animated GIF, is the actual experience you should see is that it loads instantly. And so I'm going to talk about later how you go from that 1 second median load time to something that's actually much faster. So AMP itself is kind of stunningly successful. These numbers are from Google I/O, where they were just kind of a snapshot. They're much higher now. I'm neither authorized to actually say them, nor know how much it is, but you can kind of calculate. AMP is not very old. We went to 125 million documents in 3 months. It's growing pretty fast. And what I find much more exciting, they come from 640K different domains, which I think is stunning because it means there's a lot of people who make AMP pages. And they're not because you could have had one page with 124, one site with 125 million pages, but that's apparently not what's happening. So that definitely makes me very happy. And the other thing is, I'm reminded to learn about this at the end, but it's an open source project. It's shipping every week. Also, every AMP user is always on the latest version. And so, you can say this is missing, and I'm unhappy, but it's going to change, because either you just go and send pull request to GitHub, or file an issue and someone's going to fix it. So it's I would really encourage people to see it as an evolving thing, and it's going really fast. So obviously forms were not supported very much, and it's kind of a basic feature. but it's coming. The way, I'm showing these slides a lot, but I think it's a great analogy. So there's this car race. And so, unfortunately, the average mobile site is not running. And there's an important message here, which is that if you're totally hand-tuning your site, and you're like the expert in web performance, you're going to win this race. And that's fine, right? That's not the point. The point is that AMP is kind of up there front, and the more important point is that all AMP pages are basically guaranteed to have very uniform performance and are kind of like almost winning the race and they're very fast. That's kind of the promise. So not coming from like here's some advice how you make your site fast, and you follow like half of it. It's kind of not working. Like we really wanted to up the game and have like everyone be an entire level better. And so the key to this, which was in a way surprising, but obvious in retrospect, is we make this thing called the AMP validator. And it will go, that's why I call it MK. It's not the actual AMP validator, but the AMP validator will go and tell you whether your page is a valid echo. And it's completely binary, right? You're not getting in if you're not being completely valid. And so I was actually personally very anxious about this because it might be perceived as condescending that it's something that very opinionated what you can do. But if you actually look at how it's being done, so you can like go to every AMP page on the internet. So this is actually live, right? This is our own web page, and then you append like development equals 1 and leave it all, and it will output these like validation errors. And embarrassingly, our own site actually had validation errors. But so what it turned out to be is that like we as developers are actually used to this, right? Because like we compile something, compiler says, you're like missing a semicolon, and then we just go fix it, right? So this very straightforward list of errors is actually something we're super used to, and we just go fix them, and it's fine. The other thing is that it's very important as to the origin story about why AMP was needed in the first place. But so AMP, among other reasons, was necessary because there was an incentive issue where you would have middle management saying like, I want to make more money, and then you have to like go and do it. And so the interesting thing is that the AMP validator will just say no. And so it definitely, it's obviously unfortunate that there was a mismatch in like decision making, but it does basically, in this respect, inverts the power thing because, it doesn't matter whether you have a disagreement about who's right, like there's definitely something that's very opinionated and say like you cannot do this. And so we went out, like we wanted to make way faster web pages, and obviously made we bored Google engineers made new rendering engines. Which isn't true, and it's an important point. So we did not make new rendering engine, and it works in all of these browsers. Like obviously Chrome, but also Edge, and Firefox, and Safari. One of our early goals was like we didn't want to change rendering engines. We wanted to be fast in Safari, and the Safari like chips once a year, and it's like essentially set in stone. So the other side of the story is that if you've been in web development for a while, it's actually good better nowadays. The browsers are kind of cool. They all work. And so there wasn't a technical issue on the browser side. We were just kind of using it all. And so AMP pages are just web pages. And so if you decide that AMP isn't the right thing for you, there's many there's good and bad reasons why it wouldn't fit, but it's very specifically designed for like static content websites. So if you're building like a to-do list app or Uber for lawnmowers, then AMP is just not the right tool for that. And so this talk that I'm going to give is still going to be valuable because everything here applies to all web apps. It's just that basically AMP provides it as a kind of straightforward package. Again, the first topic I want to discuss in terms of performance is font loading. And so there's this dirty little secret that web browsers really hate web fonts. And so does my son, who's super disappointed with web. And I'm going to explain why browsers hate web fonts. I mean, actually, I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to explain how it is because I'm not a technical. So this is how web fonts work. Like you want to have like fancy Roboto or like some custom thing that your like as an agency likes. So browsers, what they do is they don't like magically guess there's like the font. So they go down to your CSS, cool, and they see a font face in it, and the font face has like a URL, and you could think that they would now start downloading the font, but because fonts are really big, and that's also not how CSS typically is done. What they first do is they actually render the entire page and see is there actually any like text on it that uses this font. Because like fonts are always complicated, you might have like something like for this part of the UTF-8 range and like these special emoji, something else, and so maybe the page doesn't have an emoji and you don't need the emoji font. So they don't download the font here where they see that it might be needed. They render the whole entire page, and so in this very moment where they could just show the page, they don't. And say, yeah, now I'm going to go and download the font. And wait for the font to finish, and then I'm going to render the page. And that means those fonts, which typically are really big, so like sizes like 240K are not uncommon, they're entirely in the critical path. Because they're only being started down to download when you could have actually rendered the page. Which, is really sad. And the other thing that I glossed over in that list is like, so if you have like style sheets and synchronous scripts, because they block page rendering, they also block font elements. And so, because AMP didn't want to change browsers, it says like, what can we do to do well, knowing that this is a thing? And also, well, we could have said like no web fonts, but the fonts are also deal with it. So, as I said, all the style sheets and all the script tags, their resources being downloaded block downloading fonts. And there's actually a way to fix that, which is to say, okay, maybe unfortunate, but I'm just going to use inline styles. They're in the document. Because they're not external, they don't, you don't have to actually download anything to figure out what's going on. And if you put this little like nice async attribute in the script tag, then the browser will say, okay, I don't actually have to wait for this to determine whether I need the font. Magic, super fast. And what AMP does, it mandates this very layout of the document. So only inline styles. All script text must have the async attribute. And the result is that you have 0 HTTP requests that need to complete to trigger font loading, which is a crazy speed up. So I know this because we did not actually do this when we first had AMP kind of working last October. And so we made that decision, which has certain problems that I'm going to talk about, because it's just such a dramatic benefit. One of the big problems with this is that, so if you put async attribute on all script text, it's not actually, so the general website is actually hard to refactor everything, so it's still working. But you actually need one of the script tags to show the page. And so, because the browser wants to render the page, it will actually show it then, which isn't great. So AMP hides the page, and then the script unhides it, so that you don't get this flash of so-called unstyled content. But the problem with hiding the page in CSS and unhiding it in JavaScript is that when JavaScript fails to download, the page is bad. So I just put this up here because it's the greatest hack I've seen last year, at least, which is that I actually put this script style tag on every page, which uses the CSS animation to after 8 seconds, unhide the page of JavaScript field. So it's kind of, so obviously CSS animations are for something else, but you can use them for kind of timeouts when something that you expect to happen doesn't happen, you set to some fallback in CSS. So I think that was kind of neat. And again, this is something, if you don't want to use AMP, you can just apply to your own site. The next thing I want to talk about is what I call static but responsive layout. And so for this, I'm going to ask you on this page to read the text. Okay? Please read me on paragraph. Right? So this is how a normal web pages look, right? So it's like, and so when I was first started thinking about AMP, I was just basically, I made this decision, like whatever we would do and however we would do it, but we would not let this happen. And so now I'm going to talk about how we did this. It's actually very simple, and if you've been in web development for a while, you know that this is the best practice. So in AMP, all elements that rely on external resources have to have their size defined in markup. And what that means is the width and the height attribute on an image tag, and you have to use AMP image in AMP, but whatever, it's just an image tag. Width and height manageable. So again, there's the AMP validator, and when you put it there, and will yell at you and say it's not a valid AMP. And so on a normal image tag, you can totally leave it out. And what that means is the browser, what they do is they say like, how big might this image be? And maybe it's 0 pixel high. I don't know. And so it renders the page at 0 pixel, and then eventually that HTTP request for the image comes back. Oh, it's not 0 pixel high. Everything looks perfect. And so, but I don't think there's no good reason to not say how big the image should be. You can always know. Like you can have like your CMS, whatever you use, and you go and say like, how big is the image? Like the browser can figure out, your thing can figure out. But unfortunately, people don't do it. Now there's definitely one question about how like specifying sizes relates to responsive design. And so AMP has a very simple answer, which is you put layout equals responsive on your elements. And what it will do, it will say, thank you for giving me the width and the height. I'm going to ignore the actual pixel values, but I'm just going to calculate the aspect ratio from it. In this case, it's a square. And so layout responsive means the actual width depends on the available space in terms of the width. The height is always going to be this, in this case, because it's a square, always going to be the same as the available width. And so the result is that while, again, the browser doesn't have to download the resource, and it depends on the string size, what the actual dimensions are. But the dimensions are like statically determinable only by looking at what the input was. And so, unfortunately, in CSS, actually getting responsive images to work this way is insanely hard. That's one of the things. Like we're talking to Chrome teams, like, hey, it's too hard to make responsive images. Can you fix it? And then they, oh, we never made a web page. We didn't know, so thank you. But like, for now, it's really easier. Now, again, the first rule is you have to say how big everything is. And there's a problem with this, is that you do not always know. So there's definitely, like, this works really well 80% of the time, but there's cases where you just don't know how big something is. So, like in news publishing, there's like interactives that might have like some UI in them where you like tap it and then like shows a different stream and it's like higher. Like they have to change sizes sometimes. And AMP has a way of handling that avoids this jump situation. And this is how it works. So when AMP thinks about a document, it thinks about it in terms of 3 different areas. there's stuff above the viewport that you can't see. There's stuff below the viewport that you can't see. And there's stuff in the viewport that you can't see. And this like dramatic animation that I was showing with the jumping page, it's only annoying if you can see it. So the strict rules are only applied when something is actually visible. And below the fold is like this here, that's the easiest thing. If something here says like I would like to be a bit higher than I originally planned, like some iframe that you loaded, and we'll just go cool, resize it, fine, you don't care. Above the viewport, so you already scrolled down, which is also like super annoying. Like finally you can scroll, and then things keep jumping. Above the scroll, we also say like you can actually resize something because you can do with the math, saying like if you want to be 100 pixels higher, and I'm going to adjust the scroll position by 100 pixels, the actual delta of the stuff in the viewport is the same. And so that's fine. This is actually, by the way, something you can currently turn on in Chrome as a standard feature. You have to go like to About Flex and say something. So this part where you like quickly scroll down and it stops jumping, that's going to be like available in Chrome for everyone. But it's also kind of like, this is more of a fringe case because it actually requires sort of, since these things sort of happen at page load time, you have to scroll down very fast so that you can actually do something about this. Like it's much more common during page load that you actually have to see the thing. And the browser can't really do anything. Like if there's an ad, you see it and the ad wants to be bigger, what's it going to do? Like it can't adjust anything. You'll have the effect. And it's very convenient when like there's an ad on the page and it says I want to be bigger and it's going to be visible, then it just says no. And that's it. There's no the ad will like or the ad whatever that thing is, right? So that's one example. It will be informed that this like their request was denied. They can't do anything about it. So that's basically the general rules. It goes a bit deeper, still the same topic. So in AMP there's a concept of extensions. So AMP like by default knows how to make images, but not much more. But if you want to have tweets, Instagram, YouTube videos, that kind of stuff, you have to load an extension. And the way you do this is this. You put the script tag, again with the async attribute, on your page saying like, I want to load the YouTube video. And what we want to do is, again, we should talk about this. So basically it gives you this like amp-YouTube tag, where you say like, list the video, don't make a video. And has anyone here worked with Polymer, for example, or like web components in general? 1.5, 2.5. So there's this concept. So there's Flash style content, which is almost doesn't exist anymore on the web, which is the web is rendered before its style sheet comes. So it's like ugly. There's the same concept called Flash style web components, which is like you have a web component like this one. Like so, browser again, like I'm used to. I have no idea what this is. Maybe it's 0 pixel high, or there's text inside of it. I'm just going to show the text. Like by default, if they see a text they don't know, they say, oh, it's probably a spam, right? And that's actually, I think, like really the worst decision. Like diff might be better. Anyway, I don't know. But yeah, they definitely don't care that there's a width to the height. They'll just make like a 0 pixel high thing. And so again, that if you, as I said, you synchronously load the implementation. So it might not be there yet in the browser renders the page. And you get this Flash style web components. So what you could do is you could just wait for the extensions to load. I explained earlier, for our main JavaScript, we kind of type the page. When it comes, we show the page. We could do that for all the extensions. That would work. But it would be pretty slow. And so AMP can actually show the page before the extensions are loaded and still do a good job. And the magic is that, so AMP can actually draw a box for the thing, like AMP YouTube, before knowing how to make YouTube videos. Because it knows, has a width and a height, maybe some like layout that will be like responsive. I know how to make a box. And then when it learns how to like actually draw a YouTube video, that box gets filled. And I think that's every like web user is used to this type of loading, where there's like a blank space, or like maybe there's a background color, and eventually something comes. Like we don't actually perceive that as something that's disrupting to how we use the web. It's a very like natural thing how to load content. And so again, so basically M knows how to go and say like, I don't know what YouTube videos are, but I can size them. They're loaded synchronously. The box that they need is reserved immediately. And then when that extension loads, it says like, now I know how to make YouTube videos. There's one. If that makes sense. Cool. So this is maybe a bit AMP specific. Next thing is like most important thing, and also unfortunately kind of hard. But every web app needs to do this. So what is called DOM mutation badging. The main message is you should never, ever, ever interleave DOM reads and DOM writes. And I'm going to explain what this means. So here's a stupid program, but the problem is actually really easy to write such a stupid program. So what it does is it says like, I want to know like window.get computer style. I want to read something from the DOM. Cool. Now I'm going to write to it, like I've set the height of something. Oh, I want to see like how big it is. I'm going to get the height. Cool. Now I set the height of something else. And then I read the height of something else. Seems okay, but what happens is this. There's this concept of style recalculation, where every time you read from the DOM, the browser says like, I don't actually know the size, and then we calculate the size. And then you go like, okay, I'm going to change it. And then you read again, and it's like, oh, whoa, I'm going to recalculate again. Change again, and, you know, that's the story, right? So that's really bad because these operations are slow. They will take maybe like, it obviously completely depends on the complexity of your page, but you could calculate maybe like 2-3 milliseconds. You have 16 milliseconds to draw a frame every like 60 times per second. So if you like, and you have to do other work, and you only actually get 8 milliseconds because the browser has to actually draw something. So it's a very, very tight budget, and so you just can't afford to do this wrong. And like, the unfortunate thing is maybe you yourself will not write such a stupid program, but it's very, very easy to have a web page where there's like multiple things going on, and they're all like the same animation frame. It's like the browser wants to draw 6 times per second, and you want like animate something here, animate something here, because these programs don't know about each other. They both want to say like, I need to measure something, I need to mutate something, and they both run in the same frame. You get exactly this pattern, even though it's not actually written down as like obvious as here, right? With the same effect. And obviously the right way to do it is this, where you like batch your writes, and then you batch your reads, and there's only a single style of recalculation going on. And again, like obviously this, like doing this transformation to such a simple example is very straightforward, but on a complex, like distributed program, it's very, very hard to do this right. Fortunately, there is actually a way to do this. So AMP does it carefully, and it has its own kind of small thing. But so if you just have an non-AMP page, Google FastDOM, which is a little JavaScript library, and basically what it does, it has all the same operation you used to talk to the DOM, but it will go and essentially transform this program to this program. So it will say, it will execute this. Well, you can't actually write it this way, but like, well, if you have like a distributed program, where here's a read, here's a read, here's a read, here's a read, like in different files, here's a write, here's a read, here's a write. It will say like, cool, I recorded all your reads and I recorded all your writes, but I'm just going to execute them like this. And so your program is automatically in the idle state. One of the things that at this point you have to be explicit about is, I mean, this is a simple example where I'm actually assigning static values, but there might be sometimes dependencies between what you measure and what you mutate. But you have to be explicit about them because often there's no dependencies. But in a normal program, you typically actually you don't really need to measure right, measure for real. Like no one, like it's very rare that you actually do this, and you almost always actually want to do something like this. Okay, fast down is what you want to use to be first. The next topic I want to talk about is analytics, which is also very important. Like on your web page, your online store, your something, whatever, you want to know what's going on. But there's a problem. This comes so I've been in web development for 20 years, worked in various different roles. And I've been in this situation before myself quite a bit. It might not always be this dysfunctional, but it's very common that the following scenario happens. Like you're using some analytics solution, like let's say Google Analytics, right? It was free, awesome, put it on your site. It's fine, metrics look good. And then the salesperson from this other company comes and says we have this awesome metric. You want to use this? And you're like, oh, that's actually exactly what I need to run my business. And you're cool, I'm going to put it on the site. Kick out Google Analytics. And then you're looking at your unique visitors, and it's down. And the only thing you change is the analytics thing, so it must just measure it differently. Then you go to your manager and you're like, hey, we have this new metric, but this other metric is down. No! You have to present this to our shareholders. We need the same metric. And you're cool, I'm just going to put Google Analytics back in. And now you have two, right? It's very, very common. And then the next salesperson comes. The thing repeats. You actually no longer need that metric from the first one, but you forgot about it. It's still there. So the typical professional website is about 5 analytical metrics. And it's very, very common to have more 15 or so on them. Sometimes they're small, and they have some tiny thing that they're actually measuring, but they're just accumulated. And so that together contributes significantly to the performance problem. It's often not done very well. And yeah, so obviously too much of everything is bad for performance, even Cronut's. But for AMP, we thought could there be a way how we can have both, performance and analytics? And we have a solution that I'm actually very proud of. It's pretty cool. Which was to say, how about we accept the fact that everyone wants to have 15 different analytics providers on their site. But we just go and say instrument it once, measure it once that you click something, and just record it many times. And so the solution is that AMP knows actually how to talk to all the major analytics vendors. So it knows how for Adobe Analytics, that's how much Parsley, Chartbeat, there's so many of them. I think there's 30 or so that we support. It knows the HTTP requests they want to receive when they want to measure, for example, page view or scroll progress or all these things that they want to measure. It actually has this big config file in the open source project. In this case, it's ComScore, saying if you want to measure a page view thing for ComScore, you put this URL together with this abbreviated example. They ask this variable, canonical URL, that knows how to construct these URLs and fires them off. And so if you have 5 other configured, it just constructs another URL. It obviously still makes 15 HTTP requests, but they're really cheap because they go out of bounds, they don't log anything. But you don't load 15 JavaScript files that all do the same thing in a slightly different way. And so I think this was definitely it was the right decision to go there. There's also this little anecdote. I was in this meeting with all these analytics companies, and I was I have this idea. How about rewrite all your kind libraries? And I was kind of expecting that they would be not happy about it. But they're no, cool. we have all like intelligence in the back end. We don't really care about how that works. Go for it. And so they're all on this. Very surprising to me. I was like, why haven't you always done it this way? We could all be friends. So I'm actually also, because again, AMP is on open source, so this would, if there was one thing I would say like maybe it was interesting for non-AMP sites, like fork out this part of AMP and make it available to all sites, because like this big file, how to make requests to all these vendors, is very, very interesting like material. It's out there. So last topic, I promised earlier, I'll talk about instant loading. So instant loading, where you tap something and it's boom, it's there. There's no loading. It's more like shown to you. It's achieved through a technique called pre-rendering. And pre-rendering means exactly what how it sounds like, which means, yeah, we already downloaded the page, we already rendered it. We're just going to show it to you. Obviously, it's fast. Yay. And if you do that naively, it has a lot of problems. Because, so rendering something like costs CPU obviously, because you have to do work instead of no work. And it costs bandwidth because you like download the page, and you always like pre-rendering always means you have to guess the user will do. And like on a Google search result page, it's like 15 links or so. I don't know, 30, not yet. You have to maybe obviously you can guess they click on the first one. But you might not, and then it's for nothing. You'll never use that product. And so we went through this like set of insights for how to fix it. And the first one is, by the way, the most important insight for how to make things fast is that humans are slow. And so humans do not actually, they're not very good at perceiving fast things. They like to be think something's fast, and you can exploit that. So yeah, so this is a typical website, right? The Google one. And no, it's not. So this is a typical website. It's very long, right? There's like comments on it. No one reads. There's like images that you don't see. And so when I said humans are slow, and I see this page, I'm like, yay, it's done. I'm happy. My brain's like shooting endorphins. Yay. But there's stuff below that you don't need. So if you, in pre-rendering, render this part, and you like, boom, shows user, you can then start downloading everything else that you don't see. And because we're like, have our 2-second reaction time if you're like fighter pilot, before we scroll, like you can have all that stuff done. Right? And so that's insight number one. And that is important. Like obviously, it's less work to only render this, but like particularly with this page, it has lots of images on it actually. But they don't get downloaded until you actually go to the page. So you save a lot of bandwidth. In this case, like almost all of it, but typically you would have like maybe one big image on the first viewport, so you download that one, and nothing else. That actually doesn't fix the CPU problem and the RAM problem. And it's accelerate mobile pages. We think about mobile devices, and so they have like not. They say they are like fast, but they're not really fast. So if you actually look at how much watts they use, and it's almost directly translated to computing, that 2 gigahertz thing they advertise doesn't translate to like this machine. But way slower. And everything about them seeming fast, like I don't seem fast, it's all just the same thing where you act like it's fast. Show like an animation while things are loading, stuff like that. And so the main thing with CPU usage are embeds. So I mean, the most famous embeds are ads. So AMP will not pre-render ads. It's also good for privacy, of course, and like other issues. So that won't happen. But it might make sense to pre-render YouTube videos. Might be the most important thing on the page. But you can never like really know whether like that might use a lot of CPU because embeds come from like some other third-party vendor. Maybe the YouTube team didn't really optimize their stuff. Maybe Instagram uses a lot of CPU. It's actually true in most cases. What AMP does instead is this. Maybe you saw the difference. Maybe you can go back and forth. So during pre-rendering, we'll like put the poster image there, which uses almost no CPU. It's like we're good at rendering images. And then again, when you like go to the page, we'll quickly render the actual video in there. But you know, this page looks pretty much done. So again, you get a nice interference, like you're happy as a user, and it seems done. So that's really the thing is, and many people talk about this, perceived performance is very different from for actually being fast. And there's many times where you can't be objectively fast, you can very much be subjectively fast. And because this is above users, the subjective part is the only thing that counts. It doesn't matter that the object is fast. So yeah, again, pre-rendering AMP gives you the minimal bandwidth that you need to download all the stuff that you would actually see if you show the page, and the CPU usage is minimized. And because it's all the web, you can try it yourself. So you can go actually to every AMP dot on the internet. Again, there's like 125 million or so. Append hash pre-render equals 1 to it, and load it. And you will see that none of the images below the viewport loads. It's not very useful. None of the embeds loads, so you can't watch any, look at like Instagrams. You know, in the actual embedding use case, when it's shown to the user, when you go out of pre-rendering, page transitions to the full thing, and everything's cool. Great, so this was an overview about, like, I think the most important optimizations. But I wrote this blog post under j.mp/amp-speed. I'll do it again at the end, so you don't have to like rush to get there. And it just has all the optimizations in AMP. So if you want to apply them all to your own site, and you don't want to use AMP, you can just go to this post and have everything on it. Last thing, what if there's an AMP site out there and you still think it's too slow? You can just go to GitHub. And because AMP is open source, and it has a very vibrant contributor community. Actually pulled this data today. This is a project that's not even a year old, and it's open source last October. So far we have 350 pull requests, and it's from over 200 different unique contributors. On my team are like 10 people, a few more Googlers, but the vast majority of people are just people. And so as I put the image earlier, every AMP user, every AMP page is on the latest version, always. And so that means if you send us a pull request, we also document our release cycle. So every Thursday, we take our master branch and say, this is going to be our dev channel. So we push it out, and users can like upload to use it, test their site on it. And next Thursday, the 1 week's pretty aggressive, we'll push it to all users. And then get pull requests out there, and like, you either broke the internet or you made it fast. Both are options. We also run like a new version on 1% of pages and look at like error reports and stuff. So obviously, a bit of a responsibility not to break the internet. I think it's always like nice to talk about GitHub and contributions, but it's really I think it's a really important aspect. You actually know it's going to be out there. People are going to use it. In this case, because they actually can't really, they don't have another choice. But that's none of the choices. Like if they're on AMP, they will get the new version. There's no, you can't like lock yourself to AMP version from last week. Everyone's always before. Great. So I definitely disappointed everyone how much to learn on the AMP pages to talk about it. There's a great website called ampbyexample.com that for mediocre web developers like me, you can go there and like copy paste the examples, throw them together. Have a website, maybe. So it's really actually really nice. Really, really useful resource. We also have like docs, obviously. But, I really like this like example thing where you say, I want to make a YouTube video and like just as many as source code for each one. Yeah, that's all I have. There's our docs, GitHub, and again the link to the blog post if you want to check it out. Cool, thanks.
Questions?
So what does AMP work for, and what does it not work for? I know it works for news sites.
So I would define the scope as every form of relatively static content. So that includes definitely news, and that's what we focus on initially. There's other obvious stuff like recipes, but it does also include, for example, an e-commerce store, as in like a product listing page and product detail pages. It doesn't include the checkout process though. So there's definitely, like, that's definitely not in scope. We're working right now on optimizing that for the e-commerce use case, so there's a whole thing about caching that I didn't talk about, but so we need to do stuff in terms of like freshness requirements, but like that's definitely in scope. And stuff like setting the size, color, have a matrix of prices, stuff like that should definitely be in scope. Yeah, also, what's not in scope? Apps are not in scope. You can build an app that shows AMP documents. Like that's Google searches. There's an app called Vessel that is like a feed reader that shows AMP documents. We're actually working really hard at making it possible to like, use AMP as a data format for progressive web apps. So we have content loaded into the app. So you build an app in Polymer or React or something, you load AMP documents in it. But the AMP itself is not made for making applications. You something else to make an application and load AMP into that application.
So would it show up on Amazon.com someday?
Question is whether it shows up on Amazon.com. eBay published a blog post this week. They published their first 8 million AMP pages. So I don't know anything about Amazon, but like I think that's definitely yeah.
Wait, who did?
eBay. Yeah. So I think like I don't know anything about Amazon, but I think like that's definitely possible.
But in the Amazon app.
So like whether it will be in the app, like if Amazon chooses to use AMP basically for like for their primary, like as a primary format for their product pages and loads them into the app, they could do like that. Like I don't know, but yeah, we definitely do that.
Are you seeing anything with publishers unable to monetize effectively AMP pages as opposed to what they were previously doing?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So AMP puts limits on ad-based monetization. So one example is I talk about how ads kind of resize themselves. So there's like this whole thing where like some machine learning thing will say like, right now, 50 pixel high ads make you the most money, but you have to say how high it is. So you'll lose some revenue there. Obviously, that's always like a tiny percentage, like you might end up. And you can't like put a decision on the page. So you might lose some money because you can't put a decision. The only thing that and this is like AMP itself is not like we as in Google didn't come up with this. Like we work really, really closely with publishers, and what we told them early on is you have to expect that maybe you lose 15% of your revenue. Arguably, it's an experiment. So we do have results now. There's a blog post on our blog that has the numbers on it, so I don't really know them from memory. But it turns out that users like fast pages apparently, and they click on ads way, way, way more than normal pages. We don't, I can't give you an exact reason for this, but like, apparently monetization actually works quite well. So that, again, it will differ from site to site, and if you're like a really bad actor, you know, it's more likely that you go ads, you lose some revenue, but maybe you'll gain in the long term because your users no longer hate your page. So it's hard to say, but like the current data shows that it seems to be working. I could go more in depth. There's this whole concept of viewability, but I don't want to bore people. Selling ads is really complicated, and apparently we do well, but I can't really tell you why.
Do you think that's because of the click rate and stuff like that? It's because there's way less ads on the page now. There's maybe this you know, there's only a few providers maybe that can actually do this and work on the upfront from an ad tech perspective.
So yeah, so there's actually, we support quite a few ad companies. I think I'll go one level down. If you sell display ads on the internet, you're selling attempted renders. So on the page, there's an ad, someone pays for it, no one ever sees it because the user hasn't scrolled down. That means the prices are really bad because a large percentage of the ad no one ever sees. So there's this, but for some reason that I can't tell anyone because I don't know, that's what's being sold, attempted renders. Now, there's a concept of viewability, what percentage of ads have been actually shown to people that determines your price. You wonder why don't they sell views instead? That's really what we care about. So it's basically viewability times attempted renders. And because AMP is lazy about loading ads, viewability is very high. And that obviously also leads to much higher click-through rate because no one can click on an ad that you don't see. But the click-through rate is higher, is increased more than the viewability increase. So there must be something else, and we don't know what it is. I like to believe it's because everything is faster and users are more happy, but I don't know.
Peter, can you go a little bit into the pre-rendering algorithm? Is there anything as a developer that I can do to encourage pre-rendering certain pages or discourage pre-rendering certain content?
No. As in, you can't do anything. The algorithms are evolving, and it is also this own, like, for example, I was showing was Google Search. We hope this to be in many, many other surfaces that everyone's kind of do their own thing. It's launched, for example, on Twitter, but only right now in their Moments tab, which I think isn't used that much. But I'm waiting eagerly for them to launch a new product. And so they might do something like, if you actually like click on the tweet, there's like a detail view that has all the replies. It's much more likely that you'll click a link in it, and then they pre-render. But if you click like in your stream, you know what they're going to do. Like, it's really hard to predict. So you might not get pre-rendered. So it really depends on the use case.
Can you use an iframe? Iframe?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I can talk about how pre-rendering works itself, because it wasn't in my talk. So, as an aside, there's this thing called link rel pre-render. Only Chrome supports, we can actually say like, I want to pre-render the next page. That's actually something that desktop Chrome does. And Google Search uses for a very small number of searches. But that's not what we're using, among other things, because no other browser supports it. So I showed this like hash pre-render equals 1. So in Google Search, at least in the mobile web, pre-rendering is done using iframe. So there's literally this hidden iframe, loads the M document, has this hash on it, and tells it to go to pre-render mode. And then when you click, that iframe is just moved into view and shown. And the same with like the swiping UI that I showed early on. That's implemented the same way. So it's just 2 iframes and the 2 documents, and when you go to the next one, you swipe the next iframe. Just very little magic, just iframes. Iframes and iframes and iframes. Iframes are bad, by the way. Don't use iframes. They take about 25 milliseconds on your phone to initialize. It's 2 frames. And, yeah. But we use a lot of iframes.
The app is really awesome. I was using it for a bunch of stuff, and like you notice the speed difference. So I just want to say it was like awesome to use it. What's your take on stuff like normalized CSS? Because before, like I was using like normalized CSS in like a verified form, so it was loading. So sometimes I had it posted inline, but sometimes I was had it like externally. But with an app format, it seems like you guys have like the required mode, like that just kind of works on the Mozilla, the different browser animations. So if you're trying to achieve like consistency for a specific design of a site, what's your approach to like using like a normalized CSS or something like that? Do you throw it all inline, or what's the take there?
Yeah, so and basically one of our requirements is single style tag inline, and maybe that's actually something that might change in the future, because I think it's a very good thing for a news page, because that's definitely the fastest way to do it if you only look at one of them, like in a particular session. But you're not wasting bytes as you go from page to page. What I would want to highlight though is, and I think that actually maybe though, I didn't even talk about it today, but probably the actual most impactful thing in AMP is that we have a single style sheet and has a maximum size of 50 kilobytes. And so we kind of made up this number, but I think it works well because it seems to be enough that you can literally design whatever the hell you want, and it's not going to like say that it's just not going to get there. But it's very easy over time to get more than 50 kilobytes. And if you have like a Christmas special, you put it in your CSS file, and it's New Year's and you forgot about it. It stays around, no one knows about it, and stuff crumbles up all the time. And so you'll eventually run against the limit. And I think that's actually very important that there is a force factor that makes you, requires you to clean up every so often, because CSS can eventually be very, very difficult to performance. I would, like, as a technical solution right now, I would make my CMS kind of take a centralized CMS file and just stick it in line into these places, in the same way you would usually have an tag. So I think you can still centralize, have like some form of centralized management, but you always need to be careful that you don't get rid of the code.
I work for a digital publisher that produces a wide range of content, and I'm on the content side trying to that AMP might be a really good solution for us. And the question that they had asked me to ask you was about whether we should prioritize anything. I know this gentleman asked earlier about news content. You said, well, even eBay just put up a lot of pages. As a publisher, is there anything we would want to prioritize first as an experiment? In other words, while everyone's going, even e-commerce is going on this, news seems to be pretty dominant at this stage. Should we have our news people using this first for entertainment type content? Is there anything like that we should be aware of as we try and roll out AMP?
Yeah, I think that the history is that AMP itself was started as a project together with publishers. And so the first product that Google launched that surfaces AMP is what's called the Top Stories Carousel, which is a news-only product. But news is a very wide range here, so it's not hard news, as in unfortunate terror attack or whatever. It's very wide. But entertainment definitely falls into this. Sports definitely falls into this. So, within news publishing, I would not say that there's anything particular to prioritize. yeah, for non-news content right now, Google essentially sends you no traffic at all. Like, we don't actually send any traffic to eBay, to their web pages. I mean, I think like, if you make, so you can make AMP pages canonical, like obviously it will send traffic, it's just a web page. But if you have like, there's a way to put the AMP page on the site, and then obviously the platform sending traffic has to be the way up. And so Google will, over time, roll this out to more vertical, to like general web results, all these things. But so eBay was definitely kind of doing this very proactively. And so, but yeah, we're definitely within news. I think it makes a lot of sense to adopt to them. So like, it's commercial.
Hi, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the timestamp. I know that AMP was in the news a little bit with the recent terror attack. It seemed like there was a news story that came out seemingly a couple hours before the actual event took place. I don't know if that's not familiar to you, but what I wanted to know about is how relevant is the timestamp of the AMP document? I mean, I know with news it makes sense that more recent stories will reach closer to the top. But if I have like a recipe and I publish it in AMP and I leave it there for a month, is that timestamp relevant?
I think you really need to uncouple AMP from the technical presentation format based on HTML from like various search products. And so, and I also don't really know anything about how that stuff works, but so like again, the top stories carousel is called top stories carousel. It's going to have top stories in it. It doesn't even know anything about recipes. I think when you put a timestamp on it, it should be like the right one. But I think just recipes obviously work very different. Like you might have a timestamp on it, you might even not have one because they're kind of timeless. So I think that those are just completely different things. For like a popular news site, Google will typically crawl it quite a bit, and then the most important time is obviously when Google, in that case, like discovers it. Put the timestamp in the past. I don't know. It's probably not a good idea, but.
I guess one of those things about AMP is the way it handles the responsive elements of the page. So you can kind of do this thing with like source list and stuff where you can set a set of values like 1024, 643, 20, then put a W there. So if you're thinking about moving from this kind of idea where you had all these like breakpoints, right? Where it's like, okay, you have Samsung Galaxy, you have this thing, you have that thing, you have these like breakpoints. So if you're trying to move towards this idea of like finding the most optimal way to do some responsive rendering for different sizes, should you just use source lists with like 3 different sizes, like 320, 640, 1024? What's your way of thinking about this if you get away from this idea of like running a whole bunch of media queries in a site and slowing down the rendering?
I'm not the greatest expert at this, but so source set itself, I think it's definitely more of a primitive, and you want to have one source set within each aspect ratio. And you might not, maybe you have very specific screen sizes, but so obviously, source set is obviously very much within a certain aspect ratio. He has different sizes based on how wide the thing is. By the way, so yeah, AMP supports the width-based source set, which more popular but actually less useful is the DPI-based source set. So this was the original thing where you would say, for like a normal device, use this URL, and for like Retina or like high DPI device, use this, and for like the Samsung crazy Galaxy that has like 4x, use this. But that's actually kind of not such a great idea because, just because it's the 2x image that works well on the phone, that doesn't mean it works well on a tablet because it has more pixels naturally, and then 2x that. And so the width-based source set, basically what it says, for 400 physical pixels, use this. For 1,000 physical pixel uses. But so it's much better to way to do source sets. Unfortunately, Safari doesn't support it yet, but fully fills that part. And so again, that's still independent, but just a better way to do it. For like art direction, when you want to like actually do different things on different screens, we actually support a feature called heights, which is the opposite of sizes, where you can make the height of a thing subject to media queries. And we actually want to submit that to be a web standard because it turns out it makes it easy to at least do simple media queries, very, very concise without multiple elements. Because the way to do it, otherwise using a picture element, we have like a media query per source, but that can be really, really like long if you want to have multiple dimensions and then source set. So I'm kind of unsuccessfully asking our docs people to write a great article about this topic because I'm also not an expert, but it's definitely something that's very deep in our heart to make responsive design accessible.
So I get it's made from content that's static. Does it really matter how the page is served itself, whether the page is a static HTML file versus database, a template?
No, it doesn't matter. So yeah, static only has it. I don't even know the word for it. Again, like obviously if you have an e-commerce detail page, the prices can change over time. Something can sell out, there's no hotel room. And in a news article, there's live blogs that like constantly get content added. So I would like maybe like our own homepage was hand-coded, has like 5 pages, but I would expect that the vast majority of hand pages will be generated by some kind of machine. And it really doesn't matter how you do it. Also the publishing process, there's no like feed mechanism or anything, you just push it to your server directly on other thing. And however you want to do that. There is a thing called the M-cache that, for example, Google uses to actually show you a document. And so this cache has, again, that's something that might be optimized for e-commerce, but for now, has a semantic called stale while relevant. So this cache will always give the user the version it has. So it's the fastest way to do it, so something in cache. And then we'll, in the background, ask the origin of your keyword so that the next user gets something fresh. And so that's definitely a caching model that works really, really well for user content because like this content is typically pretty hot, so that the average user gets a very, very fresh version because there was just someone else there a few seconds ago that triggered a refresh. So that's how it works, and so I think that's actually very, very definitely for content a good caching model.
Follow up if no one else has another one. So one of my clients is a government agency that actually has a lot of news content on their website. So I'd love to go and say, hey, I can make your pages faster. But their site has a lot of crap on it. For like, there are words, there's like carousels and crazy nav and more nav and all sorts of weird stuff. Are the sites that are really big and innovative, are they basically producing 2 versions of each page, or is there a way to kind of not have to sacrifice all the frills of a web page?
So the vast majority of the AMP pages right out there right now have AMP versions on the site. And I mean, the way I put this, like 6 months ago, there was this new open source project, maybe like Google was serious, but like maybe we weren't. You can't actually ask someone like, here's this like thing 3 of us built in 6 months, go and rewrite all your stuff. Right? That's like not something you can reasonably ask the New York Times to do or anyone else. Right? So the vast majority of content right now has an version of the site. But having said that, I think we're much more confident now, like with this very established open source project, that if you start something new, or if you actually want to considering rewriting substantial parts, you can use it for everything. And so things have changed dramatically, so we support like sophisticated menus. What was the other thing? Carousel. It's definitely carousel, where we spend a lot of time optimizing. So you had, it's web components, you say that, right? Dash carousel, put a bunch of HTML in there, and then you just got it. And if something's missing, you know, either like file issue or just make it yourself. Basically, like, you can't, did I mention this? You can't write any JavaScript now. It's kind of the big limitation. But you can contribute stuff to the open source project. The only limitation is that everyone else will get to use it as well. So proprietary stuff needs to go into iframes or something, like one level down. But everything else can be pushed out.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. Okay, so we have a couple of prizes we're going to raffle off as well. Okay, so for those of you that have been here before, you know that we tend to do giveaways at the end of each of our meetups. Here you can see what I was typing. Not the number of characters. All right, so in order to do that giveaway, though, we need you to fill out a form. So, yeah, this is the QR code, short link that you can use to fill out the form. This is a survey that is actually not our survey. It's provided by the folks that run the GDG program at Google. And everybody who attends the GDG meetup takes one of these surveys ideally, regardless whether that meetup is here in LA or elsewhere in the country or elsewhere in the world. Actually, wait, no, this one's just a North American one. They split it up just to make it easier. Languages and stuff. But anyone in North America, including Canada and possibly even Mexico, would probably be taking the survey if they attend an event like ours. And at the end of each year, Google actually then raffles off a prize as well. So even if you don't win one of our prizes today, you could still win one at the end of the year. You just randomly get an email from somebody that says, hey, you just won a tablet. All right, great, there's my address. So it's definitely worth taking. And I'll give you as much time as is needed. Once you've taken it, what we do is we take the email addresses that you supply, paste that into a wheel, it's totally random, and then we'll randomly give away 3 different prizes today. So take your time. If you don't have a device, maybe you can borrow somebody else's. That's okay. Let me just make sure I don't have anything else going on over here. Yeah. There's a guest mode. I should probably do that. Let me get the QR code. And I'll start queuing up our first prize. anybody take public transportation to get here tonight? Yeah, the new Expo line or? Took Expo line? How was it? I've thought about it, like just parking somewhere further east and then taking it there. Yes.
Is the presentation slides available,
Multiple will the presentation slides be made available?
or at least your contact info in case that there's any questions?
I'm totally Googleable, like really.
Totally Googleable? Okay,
So they're already public?
No, the slides are public.
They're
No, but you can definitely ping me on the social media.
Okay.
okay, I didn't catch your name yet, sorry. Can you,
If you Google his name, you'll find him on Twitter.
okay,
It's a very unique name, so you won't find too many people with the same name.
okay,
So instantly you'll find him on Twitter. If you type in the word LinkedIn, instantly you find him on LinkedIn as well.
okay.
think someone posted his Twitter.
I did. Did I? I don't think I did.
Someone did on the.
I only put your home phone. That's okay. Yeah? How much more time do we need? And if you need more time, please raise your hand. Let's do it that way. Okay, Carl, and one to the back. Okay. A little more time. I'll keep doing my little bit. Yeah, go ahead. Are you on Google Plus? All right, so Google Plus as well. And you could also go on GitHub. You probably find it halfway too. Yeah. So if you fork the project and contribute, you'll definitely be able to reach it. So if we were to create our own web analytics tool like tomorrow, what would be the likelihood that it would be included?
So, we supported a set of vendors, and it's pretty, like, I'm not even saying within like big due diligence, but there should be a certain bar of users to be there. You can also configure this just inline, so if you have like an in-house analytics, you obviously want to be in this file, you can just put that in your page. And there's also a way to say, download the configuration from this URL, and some vendors actually just use that, where they tell people like put like analytics source equals, and then they're thing. So that's another option.
Okay. Thank you. More time? Raise your hand, please. Carl, you good?
I'm good.
Yeah, you're good? In the back, everybody? Okay. My slides can be made available, and my slides now have this info. So, all right. So let me go ahead. And what's today's date? That's not today. There we go. I apologize. Whoever filled it out first and put an email address. Well, you know what it is? Anybody? Alright, well, sorry. Okay. Anyone can steal my idea, it's fine. It should be like Control C1, Control C2, Control C3, Control D1.
You want a Linux desktop
Yeah.
environment?
Yeah. Oh well. Okay, so okay, so before we spin the wheel, let's go ahead and look at prize number one. Prize number one is this one here. These are two separate prizes. It's like a set of mobile accessories. Stuff. It's worth something, you know. Stuff. Alright, so let's go ahead and spin. You can tell who's been here before. Anyone who's been here is always like, yes, I'm. It's all Vincent.co. This is a laptop accessory bundle. Not mobile. Okay. And we'll spin this one. All right, come on down. Thanks for coming. So again, we don't have our next meetup scheduled. Typically, it is the last Thursday of the month, so if we're going to have one every 2 months, we'll be putting it up on meetup.com very quickly. For sure, we're definitely doing the Dev Fest in the fall, and if you're interested in volunteering, which allows you to attend for free, let us know. We'll be sticking around for a little bit and hanging out. And if you just want to attend or want to give a talk or anything like that, you can let us know as well. If you're going to speak, we'll let you in for free too, obviously. And if you're interested in organizing or helping out, gluten-free pizza, let me know. Seeds candy, maybe? Yeah. Yeah, sorry. You can always take the cheese off the pizza. No? Work on that? Maybe next time. So that's all of it. So thank you for coming. Thank you again to Malta for giving a great talk. Congratulations to all of our winners. I'll update meetup.com as soon as I can, which will not be tonight.
Lab experiments, like how fast comparable pages typically load. It's only 22 seconds thing. It's like not very fast. And yeah, on the other hand, AMP is kind of fast. I have some numbers. Median load time is under 1 second, which is, could still be better. But that's what, like, what the human brain is kind of going. I'm not like it, really. And what I'm more excited about, because I think that's something everyone should know about performance, is that median, that's like 50% of people have better experience and 50% of people have worse experience. And sometimes that is actually like very significant. And so what we see in the end is that our 99th percentile performance is 8-second load time. And that is, that sounds slow, but that means you're like, you're the 100th unluckiest user, and you're like, your phone is on 2G, and the Wi-Fi is like not really working, and it takes 8 seconds, right? That's not great, but that's kind of okay. And compared to the normal, like average of 22 seconds, it's a very significant improvement. And so we do this because obviously, like, our users are not happy with our search results when we send them to those pages and they don't really load, or like they're have this terrible experience in loading. And as I've showed you in that this little stupid animated GIF, is the actual experience you should see is that it loads instantly. And so I'm going to talk about later how you go from that 1 second median load time to something that's actually much faster. So AMP itself is kind of like stunningly successful. These numbers are from Google I/O, where they were just kind of a snapshot. They're much higher now. I'm neither authorized to actually say them, nor know how much it is, but you can kind of calculate, like AMP is not very old. We went to 125 million documents in like 3 months. It's growing pretty fast. And what I find much more exciting, they come from 640K different domains, which I think is stunning because it means there's a lot of people who make AMP pages. And they're not like, because you could have like had one page with 124, like one site with 125 million pages, but that's apparently not what's happening. So that definitely makes me very happy. And the other thing is, I'm reminded about this at the end, but it's an open source project. It's like shipping every week. Also, every AMP user is always on the latest version. And so, you can say like, this is missing, and I'm unhappy, but it's going to change, because either you just go and send pull request to GitHub, or file an issue and someone's going to fix it. So it's like, I would really encourage people to see it as an evolving thing, and it's going really fast. So, obviously forms were not supported very much, and it's like, kind of a basic feature, but it's coming. The way, I'm showing these slides a lot, but I think it's a great analogy. So there's this car race, and so unfortunately, the average mobile site is not running. And there's an important message here, which is that if you're totally hand-tuning your site, and you're like the expert in web performance, you're going to win this race, and that's fine, right? That's not the point. The point is that AMP is kind of up there front, and the more important point is that all AMP pages are basically guaranteed to have very uniform performance and are kind of like almost winning the race and they're very fast. That's kind of the promise. So not coming from like here's some advice how you make your site fast, and you follow like half of it. It's kind of not working. Like we really wanted to up the game and have everyone be an entire level better. And so the key to this, which was in a way surprising, but obvious in retrospect, is we make this thing called the AMP validator. And it will go, that's what my colleague indicated. It's not the actual AMP validator, but the AMP validator will go and tell you whether your page is a valid AMP document. And it's completely binary, right? You're not getting in if you're not being completely valid. And so I was actually personally very anxious about this because it might be perceived as condescending that it's something that very opinionated what you can do. But if you actually look at how it's being done, so you can go to every AMP page on the internet. So this is actually live, like this is our own web page, and then you append development equals 1 and leave it all, and it will output these validation errors. And embarrassingly, our own site actually had validation errors. But so what it turned out to be is that we as developers are actually used to this, right? Because we compile something, compiler says, you're missing a semicolon, and then we just go fix it, right? So this this very straightforward list of errors is actually something we're super used to, and we just go fix them, and it's fine. The other thing is that it's very important as to the origin story about why AMP was needed in the first place. But so AMP, among other reasons, was necessary because there was an incentive issue where you would have middle management saying I want to make more money, and then you have to go and do it. And so the interesting thing is that the AMP validator will just say no. And so it definitely, it's obviously unfortunate that there was a mismatch in decision making, but it does basically, in this respect, inverts the power thing because, it doesn't matter whether you have a disagreement about who's right, there's definitely something that's very opinionated and say, you cannot do this. And so we went out, we wanted to make way faster web pages, and obviously made we bored Google engineers made new rendering engines, which isn't true, and it's an important point. So we did not make the.
I don't know. It's definitely made in the same facility. If we're gonna get gluten-free, let's go all the way. Yeah, you're not paying for it. So if you can coordinate with me before the next meetup, we'll have gluten-free pizza. We'll even put it set aside and we'll write a big gluten-free on it so that someone else doesn't go take it and then realize, oh, I ate gluten-free pizza. I've had it before, it's fine. No? Is it on lettuce? Like a hamburger without the bun and then they take the lettuce and put cheese on it? Yeah. Alright. So, without further ado, today we're very lucky that we actually have someone who volunteered to come to LA and speak to us, and he's actually an expert as well, which is very rare for our speakers. So we have a Googler multi who came in just for the day, so he's going to speak to us about AMP. How many people have heard about AMP? Hopefully you have it here. How many people have actually created an AMP page? Wow, okay, one. So maybe by the end of today, the evening, we'll all be able to create one. We'll see. I don't want to set up multi too much, but we'll see. So come on over, we're going to do a little swap here.
Should I use the mic or just read it out? Cool. Yeah, so my name is Malte. I actually lead the engineering team at Google working on AMP. And so I'm going to give a talk. And then I was just, because I want to get something from this. So I'm looking forward to lots of questions and anything you would want to talk about. So we can just take our time to talk about what we would like to discuss. And we don't have to talk about AMP. I know way too many things about web performance. So you can ask me anything about that. Maybe other stuff. Yeah, this is also my first time in LA. I'm excited. It's not native down here. I'm originally from Germany and spent a lot of time in SF, where it's 59 degrees today, so it's nice here. Yeah, let's talk about AMP. So AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Page, which is terrible and forget about it. It's a stupid name. Just call it AMP. It's great. It's for super fast content to web. And if by now you might have seen it because it's in live products, but so there's this experience where you can swipe through search results, and the main feature is that when you actually tap it, like this, right? It's really fast, right? So that's what everyone wants, right? There's I don't think you can discuss whether that's a good idea. That's how it should be, and unfortunately, that's not how the web is today. We actually our internal numbers. We kind of just did a range, and it works in all of these browsers. Obviously Chrome, but also Edge, Firefox, and Safari. One of our early goals was we didn't want to change rendering. We wanted to be fast in Safari, and the Safari chips once a year, and it's essentially set in stone. So the other side of the story is that if you've been in Rapid Lava for a while, it's actually good better. The browsers are kind of cool. They all work. And so there wasn't a technical issue on the browser side. We were just kind of using it all. And so AMP pages are just web pages. And so if you decide that AMP isn't the right thing for you, there's many there's good and bad reasons why it wouldn't fit, but it's very specifically designed for static content websites. So if you're building a to-do list app, or if you were for lawnmowers, then AMP is just not the right tool for that. And so this talk that I'm going to give is still going to be valuable because everything here applies to all of those. It's just that basically AMP provides it as a kind of straightforward package. And the first topic I want to discuss in terms of performance is font loading. And so there's this dirty little secret that web browsers really hate web fonts. And so does my son, who's super disappointed with the web. And I'm going to explain why browsers hate web fonts. Actually, I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to explain how it is because I'm not a technical. So this is how web fonts work. You want to have fancy Roboto or some custom thing that your as an agency likes. So browsers, what they do is they don't magically guess there's the font. So they go down to your CSS, cool, and they see a font face in it, and the font face has a URL, and you could think that they would now start downloading the font, but because fonts are really big, and that's also not how CSS typically is done. What they first do is they actually render the entire page and see, is there actually any text on it that uses this font? Because fonts are always complicated. You might have something for this part of the UTF-8 range and these special emoji, something else, and so maybe the page doesn't have an emoji and you don't need the emoji font. So they don't download the font here where they see that it might be needed. They render the whole entire page, and so in this very moment where they could just show the page, they don't. And say, yeah, now I'm going to go and download the font. And wait for the font to finish, and then I'm going to render the page. And that means those fonts, which typically are really big, so sizes 240K are not uncommon, they're entirely in the critical path. Because they're only being started down to download when you could have actually rendered the page. which, it's really, really, really sad. And the other thing that I glossed over in that list is like, so if you have
It's not something that we're deciding, it's being decided at Google by internal departments and stuff like that. So we don't know, but we're already at July, and if they don't have any information about it, the chance it might end up going to the fall. So we'll see. In general, we try to meet at least once a month. Typically, it's the last Thursday of the month. This is an exception because we had a very nice speaker who wanted to come here, and so we said, sure, anytime you want. So we're here today. But typically, we're meeting on a Thursday, and usually it's the last day of the month, last Thursday of the month. Topics vary. We don't have to talk about anything specific. Even though there's the word Google in our name, GDP Los Angeles, we can actually talk about anything we want. Typically, we don't talk about Microsoft. They've offered to sponsor our events and provide food. And I seriously considered it, and then I just kind of didn't have much interest, so I didn't pursue it. But if there is a topic that you're interested in, regardless of what it is, feel free to send me a message, let me know. Whether it's a topic that you can speak about or you would like to hear someone else speak about, doesn't matter. We can go to try to find a speaker. So people will actually come to speak here. I don't know. We don't have to pay them usually. They will actually just come to speak to us. So if there's anything you're interested in, let me know. We'll do our best to find somebody. If you want to give a talk, we're more than happy to provide you the option to talk as well. And we can even work with you to kind of tweak the talk, we'll say, to kind of coach you. Was it 2 weeks ago we met, and we had a longtime member who wanted to give a talk. I pushed him to do it actually, but he agreed to give a talk. And so I worked with him to refine the slides a couple times. There's a couple of tricks that we know you can make the slides better. And he's really interested and wants to keep refining it and hopefully actually take the show on the road. So if there's anything that you think that you might be able to give a talk on, definitely let us know. We also have a big DevFest event happening in the fall. The date is still TBD. At this point, I think we're getting closer to November than October, possibly December even, so it's going to be a while away. But that is still the fall. And it'll be a big event. It will be at least a whole day, if not longer than one day. Last year we had 115 people or so at our DevFest event. This year we'll probably have closer to double that. So as we learn more about the date and the venue and all that stuff, we'll let you know. If you're interested in helping out, whether it's for DevFest or even for just a normal meetup, we're always looking for more people to volunteer. You don't have to really allocate much time to this. Again, it's not my job. It's not none of our jobs. It's something we do just because we enjoy it. So once a month we show up, we do stuff, sometimes we talk between those meetups. There's really not much time left. So anyone can help out, and the more people who help out, the better our events are. So if you see something like, boy, I really wish we had more ice for our drinks, that's your chance to volunteer. We'll give you the money to go buy the ice, bring it here, and then we'll all have ice. We're like, wow, this meal was so much better than last time, or we didn't have enough ice. Or we once had some feedback, wow, I really wish we had pepperoni pizza instead of cheese pizza. And I was like, why don't you go buy the pepperoni pizza? And today we have pepperoni pizza. So, that's all it takes, yeah. Gluten-free pizza? That's sure. If you name the place where you can get it from. Is it really gluten-free?